The year was 2002. During the early summer, during a lazy day as a senior in high school, when myself and several friends began to devise a plan to scout out a local legend, so that we would set up camp and spend the night within the confines of a reportedly nightmarish, dilapidated and ancient farmhouse. This initial group was myself, my closest friend Booth, and two brothers whom we went to school with, whom I'll refer to as S and I. Leaving school in I's car, right at the beginning of lunch, the four of us arrived at our destination around 11:30. The problem with reaching the aforementioned local legend, henceforth to be referred to as Solly House, was that the only path leading to the property that we knew of involved walking through an elementary school playground and hopping a fence into the back of the property, which would prove difficult, as school was currently in session and it was nearing lunchtime for the elementary, which would be preceded by recess. The doors would swing open and our ingress and egress would be flooding with juveniles and adults on high alert to random teenagers who trespassed amongst their wards. Especially the group we were, with one goth, one metalhead, a juggalo, and a rather average-looking teenager. I could pass for normal during a cursory observation. So when we came upon the brilliant idea to just trace the outer fence line of the elementary school, hopping fences and trekking through private property in order to attain the common path, which was the most common means for travel to our destination. As we were entering the trail behind the school, children began screaming out of the building and flooding the playground, like a cavorting and screaming cancerous mass, which engulfed the brightly painted metallic structure and rusting swings, which squeaked to life under the movements of the exuberated youths. We gave the scene a glance over our shoulders, but only for a moment. As we neared our destination, as Booth, I, and S continued their boisterous conversations by topics typical to teenage males, I began to ready my camcorder for the purpose of recording the rustic home and outbuildings, for the purpose of planning our stay over, and just to be one of the few groups to take video documentation of an exploration of the house, which is the portion of the property which was the most legendary in that particular community. Or perhaps I should refer to it as infamous for the reasons of its notoriety. We arrived on the spot to scenery that I can only describe as Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque. A crooked two-story house loomed up a small incline, drifting up from waist-high yellowing grass, stretching like a malevolent gargoyle of a forgotten era, ripping free from the confines of humanity's peeling white banner. The paint reached away from the house in long strips, as if attempting to free itself from the foreboding atmosphere which resonated from the house, despite the clear blue skies with a high noonday sun. To our almost immediate left was a small cemetery which aided age to the scene, as family plots for the personal burying of corpses was a tradition which had fell into unpopularity many years previous. The unattended landscape was wild and engrossed on the granite grave markers to a degree which could almost be referred to as completely. Greenish grey stone rising like silent monoliths from the grasp of Mother Nature's oppression, like a testament to the livelihood of those individuals whom succumbed to their fates. We were feeling inquisitive and spread out in singles to mill amongst memories of past lives, reading names and dates as best we could out of our own morbid curiosity. Every name on the gravestone was Solly, but we were unable to glean much from our observations. So after several pictures were taken with a disposable camera and a short videotape tour of the area, we turned to the other out structure which dominated this partition of the land, which was the barn. It rose above us, instilling its dominance over us by its sheer progenitor's size compared to us. We were ants standing before a child whose malice gave us all pause. This was an impressive feat in itself, seeing as how the majority of this group were experienced ghost hunters, and it was broad daylight. Someone suddenly spoke up, I believe it was Booth, and said to the group, "Fucked up. We should have saved that for when we stay." We all agreed, although it may have been more because of a lack of desire to actually set foot within that place at this very moment. We were not ready for that. So, the last thing we had to do on this excursion is to enter the house where the tragic events of the legend had transpired and, reportedly, had the most paranormal activity within it. So it was the place we were planning on actually hunkering down within for the night, so it was most important, for several reasons, that we fully document so we knew what sort of area and size of space we would be working with for the group to occupy. It was immediately apparent that this tomb of forgotten events and tragic memories wasn't completely untouched by the actions of modern world, as the walls were littered quite heavily in certain areas with graffiti which ranged from biblical passages to the twisted script of a vandal practicing his craft for moving on to more visible canvases. Immediately, this skewed the mystique of the structure within which we found ourselves. However, we had come this far and we needed to follow this endeavour through to fruition, even if only for the sense of duty and the desire to fully know if this place was a hub of supernatural energies. So we toured the house in two groups of 2 men, with myself gathering the distinction of exploring the ground level and the basement with Booth at my hip, and the half-brothers, A and S, heading to the second floor if the stairs were structurally viable for traversal. Our first destination was to the rear of the house, in an attempt to find an aperture to make an entrance into the basement. But the outside cellar door was locked with a series of padlocks, and the inside entrance to the basement was berthed of a stairway to the bottom. But this inspection gave Booth and I a perfect view into the basement, which was comprised of a gloom so thick that it couldn't be permitted by the sunlight streaming in past our bodies, which stood rigid in the doorway. We almost visibly shuddered, as the basement was supposedly the epicenter of activity. A portion of the legend of Solly House was an infanticide which took place in the basement. The ghastly wailing of a pained infant is supposed to ring through the hollow house at varying times during the night. A depressing thought, especially as I look back on it from the perspective of father, as I have a child in the intervening years since this event happened. But this detail, which popped up in every story collectively, had heard up until point, so it was one of the purported activities that we were mad about attempting to document. So when we came into the realization that we wouldn't be able to access the basement without spelunking gear, which we had none of because it's Maryland and we don't spelunk. We don't even have caves in 99% of the state. Inconsequential though. However, we uncovered a direct link to the basement in the form of a rotted hole in the floor with a diameter of approximately 3 feet. So we determined the best we'd be able to accomplish is posting something at the mouth of that hole for the night, while trying off the camcorder if it was able at that moment, or a voice record with a rope and lowered it to the basement floor from the ground level. It'll have to do. Again, we took a moment to gaze into the abyss, allowing our subconscious to drift with our gazes locked into the unknown, hoping any sight of movement or the fainted echo of a baby crying as they perched themselves on the unsteady edge of the mouth of darkness. But nothing. Despite the general creepiness of old places, the exploration and examination of the video recorded was pretty basic and uninteresting, but that information is rather irrelevant for this story. We met outside on the front porch and discussed how we would proceed, and a few nights later for making our way back to the trail to journey through the woods and back to the car. But as we walked between the twin centricles of the barn and the cemetery, we all slowed our walk until we had stopped. Our eyes lingered on the warped wood of the barn, which entranced us into a silent reverie, which wasn't broken until someone spoke. I'm not entirely sure who suggested it, but I know we all corroborated the thought, and before any of us realised the possibility hazardous connotations of our actions, we were carrying a headstone out of the cemetery and towards the car. Luckily for us, the exploration as a whole activity had taken several hours longer than we had planned to, so it was nearly evening by the time we had officially made our exit, which meant we hadn't needed to worry ourselves about children and their schoolmasters watching us carry a small granite headstone out of the woods, across the playground and across the parking lot, for loading it into the trunk of our car. Was I aware of what I was doing by perpetrating the discretion of a poor soul's final resting place? A poor soul who may have been a victim of a slaughter which had taken place in that very farmhouse we were entered into earlier. Yes, I was, but I was young and I didn't care. So we fled the scene with our souvenir and went with Ed to Wolf Homestead, where he had band practice. Booth, S and I decided to tag along, because there would be several people there who were planning on joining us for conquering Solly House. So after practice would be good opportunity for further the plans that we started discussing while still at the property. We drove and arrived there without consequence, and the band practiced their brand new nu metal to the best of their abilities. When we were finally able to have out a sit down, us four were joined by Wolf, the vocalist, and B, a tech or roadie, and spoke of the best way to stage the overnight ghost hunt. B decided to man the basement hole. Booth and several others would stay in the barn, and everyone else would scatter across the ground level and second floor. But the portion pertinent of this story came afterwards, when we begged Wolf to come to Ed's car with us, so that we might show our souvenir. Wolf was nonchalant about it, but offered for us to keep it at his house, since we never decided what we would do with it, as none of us were particularly interested in keeping it for any indefinite length of time. So having found it a home, we happily moved it into Wolf's room, where he placed it behind his coach. He informed us that his mother would flip out if she found it. So having hidden it, we wished him and his sister farewell, and let them know we'd be back that weekend to pick him up to go to Solly House. Everything was quiet for the next few days. We begrudgingly survived school for the remainder of the week, until we could finally get our expedition underway. It was pretty much the only thing I had to look forward to at that moment in my life. So on came Saturday, and we piled into A's car to go and scoop up Wolf, and head to a marina down the street from Solly House, where we would all plan to meet up, since the group was too large to fit into a singular automobile. It only took about 5 minutes to drive to Wolf's from my house, so before I knew it, we were pulling up to the curb and hopping out of the vehicle to enter the home. Something immediately struck us upon entering. Kay, Wolf's sister, looked like she hadn't slept in days. The living room was the centre of a torrential maelstrom, a vortex of refuge and laundry, which was completely uncommon. The Wolf home may have been something of a party house, but it was always confined to 1 or 2 bedrooms, leaving the rest of the house to remain tidy due to the hard work of Kay and Mama Wolf. But now, the living room was a disaster, and I could see an abundance of food smeared across the floor in the kitchen and dining rooms. Wolf picked out of his room and waved us over, looking equally as ragged as his unusually gorgeous younger sister. we entered into the sight of the gravestone sitting tall in the centre of Wolf's floor. It took us aback for a moment by the sheer surprise at seeing that object, which we had washed our hands off, and also shook for fear that Wolf's mother would see it. However, it seemed that we were already past that point. Wolf started by pointing at it before saying one line, which helped us fill in the blanks for the previous week for the wolves. "Get it the fuck out of here." We quickly agreed to take it from then, to reburden ourselves with the stone, but asked for an explanation of what had happened. We were then filled in on what had transpired over the course of the last few days. It started small, the night in which we dropped the stone off. Whispers in the next room, which was empty upon visiting it. Things being moved or lost. Dishes falling from the table. But things quickly escalated. Wolf was pulled from his bed, from a deep sleep by his hair. Kay's necklace was pulled tight in the shower, which strangled her almost to the point of loss of consciousness. Furniture was thrown across rooms. Mama Wolf quickly wanted to know why this was happening, and Wolf was forced to confess our transgressions and showed her the headstone which she had been hiding behind his couch. She flipped objects, started flying across the room spontaneously, and she declared that she would be gone until that fucking thing and the visit it brought with it was gone, leaving Wolf and Kay to fend for themselves in this event. It was at that moment when I was struck with a thought. What if the gravestone belonged to the individual who committed the Solly House massacre, not suffered it? What if a man who murdered his entire family, full of decades or centuries of time to twist his already malice hate? What if it didn't stop when we took the gravestone, or what if it attached it to us instead? What if we fucked up? This paranormal activity continued to happen, even as we hauled the stone from the house, by being pelted with clothes and magazines, as he moved the stone out of the house. The gravestone went into A's car. Booth and S decided to stay behind and attempt to help Wolf's siblings recover from their ordeals, and A and myself sped back to the elementary school, which acted as our gateway to the Solly House. This next portion I'm almost hesitant to iterate, for someone because it paints myself in a terrible light, but for the sake of completing the story, I shall state it here. In a fit of laziness and worry about getting back to see if the activity had ceased, A and I decided to leave the grave marker standing upright on the pitcher's mound of the elementary school base field. Luckily, that was the last I heard about it. Nothing from the school or police. Nothing in papers. Wolf and Kay recovered from any injuries they sustained during the paranormal activities, and their mother came back and only grounded Wolf for a month. Needless to say, we postponed our stay at the Solly House until Wolf was granted freedom. But that's a different story for a different day. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.